And we're live. Hey there, beer tubers. Welcome back to Maxwell Star and Beer Analysis 101. Back at you tonight with a lovely panel once again with Carling Black Label. We're going to teach people how to properly analyze a macro lager from old-timey Canada. Anyway, before we move on tonight, we're going to introduce the panel. And I'm going to go classic here and introduce Lee first. How you doing tonight, Lee?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm doing all right.
We'll see after this beer. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, right. So see if we're still talking to each other. Moving right along, we've got Craig coming in with technically Carling Black Label.
All good. Hello, panel.
Hey,
hello, viewers. Yeah, good. Thanks for having us. This premiere production.
Yeah, I know. The classic, the total class of beer tube professionalism, you know. Anyway, speaking of professionalism, let's move over to Greg. How are you doing tonight, Greg? You're muted.
I know, that's why I don't mute myself, because I forgot I was muted. Yeah, I'm here. I'm excited. It's a nice warm evening. There's a lot of weed in the air. Must be because of the warm evenings, so that might possibly taint my review a little bit. But hey, I'm finally excited to review a Johnny Walker product.
That condo in a Etobicoke life, huh?
Yep.
Yep, it's about to get worse. And moving over to the last, but certainly not least, and I'm sorry I left you last today, but Ash, thank you for coming, and how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing absolutely splendorific. Take that as it may. I'm actually looking forward to this. It should be interesting.
Cool. I'm glad somebody is. Yeah. No. Actually, I'm kind of curious about this because it's always interesting to do something I don't normally get around here. And of course, you know, me personally, I bought a pack of Carling Black Label in Quebec when I was up for a visit a month ago. Sent one to Lee. Anyway, so let's move on to the beer history on here and describe exactly what Black Label is and where it came from. So, the story of Carling starts in 1818 when Thomas Carling, a farmer from Yorkshire, England, emigrated to the rich farmlands in the area of what is now London, Ontario. In his first year there, Greg, can you mute yourself? Thank you. In his first year there, Carling cleared a small area of farmland for himself. In tradition of the day, Carling called on his neighbors to help at a stumping bee, a cooperative effort where each man brings their own oxen and tools to clear away stumps. In return, all the neighbors asked for was to be refreshed and fed. Tom Carling's refreshment was his own home-brewed ale, which was of such quality that he soon began brewing it for other stumping bees. In time, his ale became so popular that he gave up farming and began brewing full-time. Carling would establish his own brewing company in 1840 in London, Ontario. Carling's sons William and John would take over the reins in 1849, changing the name to W&J Carling Brewing Co. By the late 19th century, the brewery had grown to become a national name in Canada. John Carling would also have a successful political career as a member of Parliament for London, Ontario, under the government of Prime Minister Sir John A. Macdonald. In 1878, Carling built a 6-story brewery in London. However, the brewery would be destroyed by fire a year later, and shortly after, William would die of pneumonia contracted from fighting the blaze. John would rebuild the Carling Brewery a year later, building it into one of the largest breweries in Canada, rivaling fellow London brewery Labatt. He would be knighted in 1893 and served as a senator in the Canadian Senate until his death in 1911. In 1880, Carling entered the U.S. beer market by purchasing the Rogers and Hughes Forest Brewery in Cleveland, Ohio, which changed the name to London Brewery. The brewery changed hands over the years, but would retain rights to produce Carling brands until production stopped in 1911. Carling brewed mostly ales, but began brewing some lagers in the 1870s. Carling's lager, later called Bavarian Stock Lager and then Imperial Club Lager, was their first lager brand. In the 1920s, Carling released their Black and White Lager. In 1926, Carling renamed their Black and White Lager to Black Label Lager to bring their branding in line with their also recently released Red Cap Ale. Black Label's strength and low price quickly made the beer popular amongst the working class, most famously loggers and miners of northern Ontario, where it attained a blue-collar image. In 1930, Carling merged with Canadian Breweries Limited, a brewery conglomerate that also consisted of Brading Breweries in Ottawa, Capital Brewing of Ottawa, Kuntz Brewery of Waterloo, and British American Brewing of Windsor, Ontario. O'Keefe Brewery would also join the fold in 1934. By the 1930s, luxury car manufacturer Peerless Motor Car Company now inhabited the former Cleveland Brewery. In 1933, following the repeal of Prohibition and the onset of the Great Depression, and with little demand for luxury cars, Peerless decided to shut down the automotive production and convert the factory back to a brewery. They turned to Carling for help, and in an exchange for Peerless stock, supplied recipes and the rights to produce Carling brews, as well as technicians and equipment. And the company became the Brewing Corporation of America. Initially, they produced Red Cap Ale, but sales would be sluggish until they more budget-priced Black Label was introduced. After World War II, Canadian Brewers Limited took full ownership of Brewing Company of America. In 1946, they discontinued Black Label, but in doing so, sparked a 40% sales drop within 2 years. In 1950, Canadian Brewers reintroduced Black Label to the U.S. market. Marketing for the beer introduced the famous "Hey Mabel, Black Label" tagline, which had become one of the most recognizable of the day. In 1952, Black Label was introduced into the UK market and other parts of the British Commonwealth, such as South Africa. Advertising in the UK included a classic marketing campaign in the 70s and 80s with a series of ads showing someone doing something cool or clever, followed by someone saying, "I bet he drinks Carling Black Label." In 1969, Canadian breweries sold to Rothmans / Pall Mall for $28.8 million and was renamed for its two largest subsidiaries, Carling O'Keefe. At the start of 1970, Black Label was still a hot seller, but sales had started to slip against the likes of Anheuser-Busch and Miller. As sales declined, Carling O'Keefe began to sell or close breweries to stay afloat. In 1975, Carling sold their American division, which in turn merged with National Brewing Company to become Carling National Breweries. Carling National would be acquired 3 years later by G. Heilman Brewing Co. of La Crosse, Wisconsin, best known for the American Old Style Lager. G. Heilman was eventually bought out by Stroh Brewery of Detroit, Michigan, and in 1996, which itself was bought out by Pabst in 1999. And tracing back to that Carling National Brewery, that's also the same brewery that the National Brewery is the same brewery that produced Colt 45, as we discussed in our Colt 45 analysis a few weeks ago. Anyway, in 1987, the Canadian UK market Carling O'Keefe was sold to Elders IXK of Australia, which then merged with Molson in 1989, today's Molson Coors. The last major marketing campaign for Black Label, with the tagline, "The Legend is Black," lasted from 1988 to 1991, after which Molson ended the campaign in Ontario. However, the beer remained popular in Quebec, where advertising continued. In the UK, Black Label branding was dropped in 1997. The beer has weakened over the years, and marketing no longer acknowledges it was doing so good too. It's Canadian heritage, and literally, if you go on the Carling UK's website, it doesn't even mention that it was from Canada. It just says it was brewed by Yorkshiremen, which is true, but big part of the story missing. However, in a recent rebranding, as a nod to its history, a small Black Label was re-added to Carling products in 2017. You can see that on your can if you hold it up there, Craig. Carling in the UK recently faced criticism after it was found that Carling Lager, former Black Label, was actually brewed to 3.7% ABV instead of the 4% on the label. Carling was accused of circumventing British tax laws by brewing it to a weaker strength and then labeling it at 4%. However, Molson defended the criticism by saying that it still fell within the 0.5% ABV natural variation limit under European Union law. Anyway, so products from Carling include Carling Lager, which is not the same as the Black Label, Carling Ice, Carling Dry, 5.5%, and of course, tonight's beer, which is Carling Black Label. Carling Black Label is a 5% ABV American adjunct lager, which is 3.7% in the UK. I don't have any knowledge of what malts they use probably rice and corn. I'm just guessing. Anyway, moving along. Anybody want to go ahead and read some of the comments? Lee?
We've only got basically one from Eric Gilbert saying he's about to pour this tasty beer up. So there you go.
That's a good idea. I'm going to pour mine up. Oh, yeah. There you go. All right. So it's probably going to be short histories for most of us, except for the folks in Ontario. But Lee, do you have any history at all with Carling at all? I think you were mentioning you had some of their other stuff.
Yeah, I've never had Black Label. I've had just the basic Carling lager, and I had I think it's Carling. I think it was called Carling Light or Clear or something like that. It was some little like low carb brand or something like that. I think it is, or I might be mixing up with another beer I bought around the same time. It was like 2009. Got back from the Neil Young concert in Halifax with my dad and my brother, and we stopped at one of the NSLCs along the way in the city, and it had Carling for some reason there. It was like, so exclusive. I can't get it at my NSLC, but I could get it there. But yeah, I haven't had any real experience with the Black Label version, but the other Carling I had was So we'll see how this one goes when we get to the review.
All right, Craig, what's your history with Carling Lager?
I'd never had it as Carling Black Label. I think they dropped it. It was in 1997. Yeah. So that was, although I was kind of drinking then, I think I actually had it when it was just called Carling back in the late 90s, early 2000s kind of time. And I never really liked it back then. It was not one that I'd actually go and seek out, being a lager drinker. But yeah, I haven't had this for quite a long time. So, yeah.
Cool. Greg, what about you? You had Carling before?
I have never had Carling Black Label. I thought I had regular Carling before, but according to Untapped, I have not, or at least I've never untapped it. So officially, I've never had any Carling product before. So this is my virginity being lost on video. Enjoy.
That's a rarity for you. And of course, Ashley, what's your history?
Carling products I've had in the past. The Carling Lager, I think it's like 4.9%. Carling Light or whatever it is. Had that before. I've never had Black Label before, which is funny because I pretty much grew up around this. My mom drank it. My uncle drank it quite a bit. And I remember there was a time when we all lived together in the same place, and in the basement there'd be like this aisle of flats of empties, and they were all the same can that you have right there. And we're going back to like 1998. Actually, I think there was less red in the logo. It was more black. Anyways, and it was just like flat upon flat of just empties, and it was all Black Label. Oddly enough, I think this is the first time I've had it. So I have and have not had a history with this beer. It's funny.
Yeah, I'll have to bring up some images of old cans. Maybe it looks something like, did it look like this kind of? I don't know. It's hard to tell. I mean, as far as my personal history is, Carling, I don't know if it ever was, because it would have been gone well before I got into drinking beer. But I don't think I've ever seen Carling around these parts, and it kind of makes sense in that department because maybe it was a national brand back in the 70s, 60s, 70s. But by that point, I think there was a regulation where in order to sell a beer in a certain area back in the 70s and 80s, that the brewery actually had to be in that province. And it used to be true. Like we had a Nolan brewery, we had the Moosehead brewery here, we had had a Labatt brewery here. And the Molson's over in Moncton, and just that kind of thing. So we had no coverage for those products, but I don't think we ever had the coverage up until probably they got bought out for Carling O'Keefe, and I don't think it was really readily available here, and it was never popular here. So I've never actually seen this before. Only heard the name through talking about beer online. And it's one of the things I was kind of curious about, like when I went up to Quebec back in the beginning of last August, that I kept seeing Carling products everywhere because it's still popular in Quebec. And this 6-pack of cans that I bought just before, like at a gas station, just before coming back across into New Brunswick, and it was like $8 for 6 cans. So it's really dirt fucking cheap beer, and you could probably get a bigger pack of it with more cans in it. But when I was out in Quebec, there was 2 others. I think they had the Carling Lager, which is in a blue can and looked completely different. Looked more like what Craig's got. And they had like a 5.5% ABV dry as well as the black label. And I knew that I'd been seeing it in gas stations all over Quebec, and I'm like, yeah, I got to try and get myself some of that before I leave the province. And I did. Am I glad I did? Well, that's to be revealed. Anyway, moving right along we got more comments here.
Yeah. So Eric Gilbert says no malts in here. Raining on Your Parade says just watch Terry K's review of this. He said the aroma was like a cardboard box full of kittens that got run over. Eric Gilbert says Black Ice Baby. P.A. Bruno's seconds Raining on Your Parade's comment there. Eric Gilbert says shit, it's actually lacing. Greg chimes in saying nice belch, Nick, very, very professional.
Welcome.
Raining on Your Parade says, yep, decided not to pick this up tonight. Drunken One's on here saying, my favorite ice holes. Hi, gang. Hello, Drunken One.
Hey, Drunken One.
And Eric Gilbert finishes off saying, all gone, boiled corn on the finish. Oh, and then Paul just chimed in saying, Nick loves going out of his way to make mistakes.
Shut up, Paul. I tell you, I did a lot of Google research for this. Not just Wikipedia this time. Anyway, yeah. So I guess those now we got all the comments. Reds. Let's go over to the final opinions and Lee. Might as well start.
All right. So this is without a doubt mostly tasteless. This tastes very much on the level of the very sort of minimally brewed budget brand macro lagers that you can find around. Its saving grace, I would say, is that it's not the sweet sort that you find. It's not on the sweet side, so it's not something that's going to get cloying after having a few cans, I think. It's dry, musty, referencing the Terry K review that was quoted, very much like cardboard, kind of that dry, musty corn kind of thing going on, watery as fuck. Other than that, inoffensive. It's actually like just totally forgettable. Like I've already slugged it down without even thinking about it. I wasn't even intentionally doing it. It was just so easy to drink. So in that case, fitting style wise, you know what? I got to give it fairly low grades because it's like we've just had a number of really excellent macro lagers on the show that do the style so better, just so much better. I'm going to sit it at about a 5 for style. And for personal enjoyment, it almost doesn't blip the radar of enjoyment or hatred or anything like that. It's like, it's just there. So I got to kind of give it just a baseline 5 as well, I guess, just to be fair. But that's where I'm going to sit at it.
The hallmark of being inoffensive kind of thing. Right. Anyway, Craig, and I'm actually kind of curious, like how yours differs because, I mean, I guess technically it's a different beer there now, but it's the same lineage. But wondering how different is it?
This is 4%, not 3.7, which I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, and that's because it is 3.7 brewed to, and it's labeled incorrectly.
Yeah. It's labeled at 4, so
yeah.
So there you go. This is a 500ml can, and I've got that much left, half a pint, if you like, in a Stella glass, which is a better beer. It's got more flavour. I mean, this is very, like Lee said, it's very kind of watery. It's got there's a little bit of sweetness lurking in there, but apart from that, it's pretty. It's just not. It's wet. If it's really hot or something, then you can slam these down, no bother at all. But if that's it. It's a beer. It's a lager. But if you're looking for anything else other than that, then there's much better. Again, as what Lee said, there's a lot better lagers out there. Having tried a few sort of this year, it just gives me this is good though, because it's something I'd never actually go out and buy. But for doing this, it gives me a chance to see how bad or surprisingly good some of these things are. So, but yeah, it's okay, but it's not as good as some others. And I was of the opinion of this when I was a lager drinker. I never really liked it back then either, and I still kind of don't now. So in terms of a style rating, then I give it a 5, and then my overall kind of, I wouldn't call it enjoyment, but I'll give it a 4. So that's me done.
There you go. Sounds exactly the same here. All right, Greg, you there?
All right, well, here comes Greg to screw up the whole averages. So
you actually like this, don't you?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Lee says. It's not sweet. I'm assuming there's corn syrup in it. This doesn't taste corny to me. So those are two things that make me like a lager. This to me, I get a bit of a cardboard taste, for lack of a better phrase. And I get the same taste from only 2 other beers, Miller Genuine Draft and Miller High Life. For some reason, I didn't get that taste when we actually reviewed MGD, but since then I've retasted that beer and I do get that taste. So this reminds me a lot of those 2 beers. I don't know why. I don't know if they have anything. I don't know if the breweries have anything to do with each other. Frankly, I wasn't really listening to Nick do his little talks, so I don't know. He might have said something about that. But yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's wet, it's inoffensive, which basically for a macro lager, like I'm not really expecting a macro lager to be good. It's just there. Have I just mowed the lawn? Am I enjoying it, or am I gonna have 3 of them and throw up because it's too sweet? And this is not that. So I would sort of put it between that. I think it's better than Miller High Life. I don't think it's as good as MGD. So I don't know. I don't even remember what I rated those, but somewhere on that scale. I'm just gonna give it 7 all around. 7 for style, 7 for enjoyment. It's fine.
You're ruining it, Greg.
That's what I do. I got to Klizak it since he's not here.
Somebody has to be tasteless.
That's right.
All right. And moving right along to Al Bundy of BeerTube, we've got Ashley Sexton. What do you think of Carling Black Label?
So usually, when we're doing these macros, I usually shit on most of them, really hard. I'm usually bringing the marks down quite a bit. I think there's a few exceptions out there, but this one's not okay. When you look at it, okay, have I had way better lagers? Absolutely. It's not even a fucking question. Have I had better macro lagers? Yeah, absolutely. That's a big check mark there too. But this one's actually not that bad. It's to get back to what Lee said right at the very beginning, it's wet and it's there. It's like you just sort of drink it and then it's gone. Drank it really quick. I polished off my first can, and actually these are I got the tall cans. I think like $2 a piece, whatever. Not much.
Like 2 something in the beer store.
Yeah, 2 something. So I'm on my second one already.
Wow.
205, I think.
Sure. Not much of an aroma. If I were to blind taste test this, I would have thought that it was I would have thought honestly that it was a cider that was watered down. I'm getting like an apple, like a cidery type taste to it, right? Yeah, and I can't remember if it was Raining on Your Parade or it was. Raining on Your Parade or Eric Gilbert was like, yeah, there's no malt in there. Yeah, there's probably not a fucking single piece of malted barley in this beer. But for whatever reason, I'm drinking this, and maybe it's nostalgia talking, but I'm like thinking of like my family members drinking this. I'm enjoying it. You know, it's going down easy. There's no offensive flavors. I haven't really warmed it up or anything like that, but I'm not picking up anything like no off flavors. I'm not getting the cardboard, just be completely honest. Maybe cardboard to you, I'm getting that like cider to me. But you know,
I think you may actually be right on that, because when you say that, I kind of gel with that taste note you're giving.
Yeah, it's you know, it's inoffensive for a macro lager. It's cheap, it's wet, it goes down easy. I'm not getting any bad aftertaste from it, which I've gotten from some of the other ones, like fucking Corona. Fuck you, that shit was horrible. So black label macro lager. I'll give this a 7 for style. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give it a 7.5 for style, because this is better than probably 2/3 of the macro lagers I've had on this channel. And then for personal enjoyment, I'm going to give it a 6.5, because I'd probably drink it again if someone put it in front of me. I may not go out and buy it, but if someone gave it to me, I'd happily drink it pretty quick.
Oh,
there we go.
Right then.
Wow.
Yeah. You know what? I got to concur. Like, you can drink a lot of that without really noticing it, but I'm just kind of finding, like, as this thing warms up, it's really becoming a beer that, don't try and taste it while it's going down, or try to taste it when it's warmed up. Like, this thing warms up and it's sitting, like, you drank half your beer while watching TV, and now it's all warmed up, and you've got like, should I drink the rest of that or throw it out? Just toss it. It is clean and inoffensive. I find it's very light. I find that it's not necessarily like cider, but it's very lemony. Like lemony with a hint of copper coin metallic, like that herbal hop note. A little bit of hint of like malt, like toffee malt, but it's very faint. Mostly what I'm getting out of this beer is this very big corn note and yeast, like a yeast like bread. It's almost like, it really reminds me of like the taste of eating tortilla chips without salsa or anything, just with the salt, that building white corn kind of taste, and I imagine that's in there. And one thing I will mention is that when I did research for this beer, some of the early labels did mention it was a rice beer, but I couldn't find any information about it being a rice beer. So I'm guessing that maybe they use rice and corn in this mostly, and would kind of be maybe a given considering the shit price that this has. So yeah, I gotta say that this beer is clean and inoffensive. When you drink it, like nice and cold, but it disintegrates when it warms up. For me personally, I'm going to give it, just because it's inoffensive, I'm going to give it a 5 for the style. And for me, as it warms up, because I'm not really one to drink beers super quick, I find that as it warms up, it gets harder and harder to drink, and that's kind of killing the enjoyment factor for me. But it's okay. It's serviceable. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 overall. So yeah, that's for me. And pretty much an even story. It sounds like we're all getting pretty close to the same tasting notes anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's not offensive, is it? It's just more of a, like you say, not getting
boring.
The aftertaste. Yeah, it's
boring.
Yeah, there's not much going on, but it doesn't taste horrible. It's just nothing to taste for it to be horrible, really.
Yeah.
Your tortilla chip was actually probably the most spot on representation for a tasting note I can think of, actually. One without any salsa. It's just like, you can eat it, but man,
plain.
Yeah, you might as well have a rice cake.
Yeah.
This cost me a £1.
Oh boy.
So,
oh boy.
About 200 yards away.
200 yards away.
Yeah, it's shocking I had to walk that far.
I thought one thing that was really shocking is when I did the research for it, like, that the Carling UK website, like, not only did it kind of glaze over the history, it just completely omitted the fact it was from Canada. It just said it was brewed by Thomas Carling. I'll do it, Ash. It was brewed by Tom. Sorry, I'm middle of doing three things here at once. It was brewed by Thomas Carling, a Yorkshireman, back in the 1800s or something like that, and then it was continued by his sons and always brewed. By the way they made it sound, it was always brewed on Burton-on-Trent or wherever it's brewed now.
Oh,
I'm like, what are you talking about? It was introduced into the UK until 1952. The sons were long dead by that point. But it was just kind of funny to read that and like, holy shit, Molson, fuck you. Oh man,
I imagine the British terroir really comes through in the UK version.
The terroir, yes. Yeah. Those wild yeast inoculating the wort. Yeah, you know, it's funny with these macro lagers that we do, because it's because all of us are coming from a world where we're drinking a lot more sophisticated beers, right? So you really have to put yourself in the mindset, like the scene and situation that you'd be drinking this in, and whether or not it would fit. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I was thinking that myself, thinking with a bunch of people who drink this sort of stuff all the time, it's like, how did I even do that? How do you still do that? It's kind of like, you know.
I couldn't come home and drink a whole bunch of these like my mom did, like my uncle did, but you know what, tomorrow morning, like, it's gonna be hot as hell here tomorrow in Ontario, and I got a whole shit ton of shit to do outside, and something like this would probably be, you know, welcome after I'm mowing the lawn.
It's a lawnmower beer.
Yeah, and exactly. You know,
and the funny thing is, you know, Nick, you say they gloss over the history for the UK version. It's like this is one of these brands that's been passed around so many times that the history doesn't matter anymore, because it's not the same beer. It's not even probably remotely close to being the same beer as it was when it first started, right?
Oh, so for sure, yeah. It's not even close to.
Yeah, when it comes to beers like this, they're just mass-produced, basic formula kind of stuff. You know, where can we get the ingredients together and cheaply put out a beer in mass quantities and sell it for almost no money and make a profit still. So I mean, it's like who get at this point, this beer is not Carling Black Label as
it's brewed by license, and God knows if it's like they use the same beer formula to produce something else. Like, remember Ewart in one of our private chats actually said something about this. It's the exact same beer as Old Vienna.
I disagree there.
It doesn't taste like that to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I'm just saying that if that were true, that it's kind of like, you know, multiple beers being produced is the same. And part of the label and the name and the history kind of plays into the flavor that you get too. So
kind of
makes it interesting to try them side by side.
Yeah. Kind of makes me want to do an Old Vienna Carling Black Label blind taste test side by side, though, just to test that theory out. But I'm not that interested. Let's not go crazy.
Yeah, right. You're assuming too much. I could do that, but do I want to?
Yeah.
Is it worth the time? Is anybody going to watch it?
Anyway. Do we want to hit comments before our final tally here? Or?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Eric Gilbert says, High Life rocks. Black Label almost made me vomit chugging it. Okay. Rating on your price says, Terry K said there was some wheat in this, apparently. So maybe he has an inline on at least the UK version. Who knows? Jamie's in the comments. Basement Beer says, yes, add salsa and it would taste great. Make this into a Clamato beer or whatever. Eric Gilbert says, rice on the palate, corn on the finish. And Paul says, put yourself in the mindset of recently working all day, standing in the unemployment line, coming home to the trailer court, beating the crap out of your wife, and drink your well-earned Black Label or 24.
Hey, right. Mabel, Black Label.
I think that's Stella.
Stella? Yeah, Stella's the wife. Anyway, that's way off topic. All right. So, let's get over to presenting the scores here. And first of all, let me bring up tonight's sponsor. This is tonight's episode of Beer Analysis was brought to you by Aries shoes and accessories for today's woman, specializing in plus sizes since 1972. Newmarket Mall, Chicago, Illinois. Ashley should hopefully get that reference.
Love
all
right. So,
marriage, love
and all their
and
shoes are spray
marriage.
tan resistant.
all right. So tonight's scores for Carling Black Label are, drum roll, please, or you don't have to. 5.9 for style and 5.4 overall.
That's perfectly fair.
No. Not as good a production when Chris Lizak's not here, but hey, we're surviving.
Hey, Greg, we really pushed those numbers up, buddy.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Keeping it real.
Dreadful.
Keeping it real for the unemployment line.
Hey, you know what? Here's the thing with like a lot of just lagers in general. When I get one from a craft brewery, I often don't like them, and I often would rate them lower than this because, quite frankly, I find they're too heavy for what they are. If I want a heavy beer, I can get an IPA, a stout, all sorts of stuff. I don't want a lager where I drink one of them and I feel like I'm done for the day. I want, the whole point of lagers is to be able to have a few of them by the pool, after cutting the grass, whatever. And this, to me, does the trick. A lot of craft lagers don't work that way for me. So for anyone that actually gives a shit about my opinion, that's why if we do rate lagers that are craft lagers, I probably would give some of them lower ratings than this.
He has a method, folks.
I do have a method, and I know somewhere out there is somebody that actually gives a shit. So that's why I'm just explaining it.
Well,
So
I
where
finished my
over
second
the
can,
rainbow.
so there we go.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just when it comes to I didn't really care for it in the sense that of all the great like macro beers. Yeah, I know great macro beers sounds like an oxymoron to us craft beer guys, but of all the ones that we've tried, that seems to be like really close to the bottom. Like maybe not as bad as Corona, but I'm not a fan. I mean MGD any day. Even High Life. High Life was just damn sessionable.
All right, what's next week's beer?
All right, so what's next week's beer? Another drum roll. We're gonna do Duchess de Bourgogne.
Yay!
Duchess de Bourgogne. Yay! And yeah,
My
it's
label
another
is
beer that I
slightly
brought
ripped.
back
Can
from-
I still use it, Nick?
Yes, you can strip it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna take a look at the. I think it's a Flemish Red from Belgium. That should be an interesting beer.
Ooh.
And to keep viewers like Paul happy, we're actually going to be focusing on, for most of September, we're going to be focusing on more craft beer entries this month, just because we've got a stockpile of craft beers that need to be done on Beer Analysis 101. We might as well power through them and then continue to our regularly scheduled programming in the fall.
So you can stop pretending you're working, Paul, and actually join us.
Yeah. No, exactly. Anyway, do we have any more last minute comments? We Paul have a snarky retort?
We got a bunch from Ewart here saying read Earth's comments. Earth not being in the chat tonight, so that kind of that's real funny. Ewart making fun when the guy's not here. TQ Murray, I'm not reading the rest of his. Fuck his comments. They're stupid. Eric Gilbert says Thornberry makes a good lager as well. Creemore. Yeah, Creemore's still pretty solid, good stuff. Raining on Your Parade says having a hard time getting the Duchess around here these days, but that beer is mega awesome. And that's really it.
Yep. Technically speaking, I think next week's beer is actually episode 50 of Beer Analysis 101. Not it's like a huge milestone or anything, but it's still kind of cool to note, and we got a nice beer for it.
Yay.
Yay! Woo! All right, so yeah, we're gonna go off here, I think, and we're gonna come back on with an after chat and momentarily. And thank you for watching. Tune in next time for Duchess de Bourgogne. Bourgogne. It's Duchess de Bourgogne. It sounds Italian.
Bourgogne.
Right. All right. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Greg. And thanks, Ash, for coming on. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Fuck you, Paul. And we'll talk to you folks later. Cheers.
Cheers. Penis.